In a small village nestled among the gentle hills outside Medina, two brothers lived a life that would eventually become legend. This was not long after the beloved Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, had returned to Allah. The village was simple. Mud brick homes with flat roofs, narrow winding paths, and a small marketplace where locals traded dates, grain, and handcrafted goods. Children played in dusty streets while goats wandered between homes, and the call to prayer marked the rhythm of each day. The brothers, Yasir and Ammar, were born to humble parents who had embraced Islam during their own journey to find truth. Their father had been a shepherd with calloused hands and a gentle heart, while their mother was known for her healing knowledge of plants and herbs. From an early age, both brothers showed signs that Allah had blessed them with special qualities. Yasir, the elder brother with a tall frame and thoughtful eyes, had shown an extraordinary connection to the Quran since childhood. While other boys his age struggled to memorize short surahs, Yasir absorbed the holy words as easily as the dry earth soaks up rain. By his 20th birthday, he had committed the entire Quran to memory, becoming a hafiz respected even by elders. Each morning after dawn prayers, he would sit in the corner of the village mosque surrounded by a semicircle of children and adults alike, teaching them proper recitation with patience that never seemed to run dry. "Remember," he would often tell his students with a warm smile that crinkled the corners of his eyes, "these are not just words we speak. They are the words of Allah that should live in our hearts." Ammar, younger by 2 years, was different from his brother but no less devoted. Where Yasir found his calling in knowledge and teaching, Ammar discovered his purpose through the work of his hands. He had inherited their father's strong build but developed skills as a carpenter that brought beauty and function to the village. His workshop, a simple shed attached to their modest home, was filled with the pleasant smell of sawdust and oils. From this humble space came intricately carved doors, sturdy furniture for new families, and detailed minbars for mosques. What truly set these brothers apart, however, was not their individual talents, but the way they lived their faith. In a time when many who had wealth displayed it proudly, Yasir and Ammar chose a different path. Their home remained simple despite their ability to afford better. Their clothes, though always clean, were patched and mended rather than replaced. Yet no traveler ever passed through their village hungry, and no orphan went without care if the brothers knew of their need. One evening, as the golden light of sunset bathed the village in warmth, an old woman struggled along the path toward the well. Her water jug balanced precariously on her frail shoulder. Ammar, returning from delivering a newly built cradle to a young couple, noticed her difficulty. Without hesitation, he approached her. "Peace be upon you, grandmother," he said, using the respectful term even though they shared no blood relation. "Allow me to carry this for you." The woman's weathered face softened with relief as Ammar gently took the heavy jug. "May Allah reward you, my son," she said, her voice like dry leaves in the wind. "Your prayers are reward enough," Ammar replied, falling into step beside her. "How is your grandson? I heard he had taken ill." The old woman's eyes clouded with worry. "The fever still hasn't broken. His mother hasn't slept in 3 days watching over him." Ammar nodded thoughtfully. "After I fill your water, I will bring some honey from our stores. My brother knows prayers that bring comfort to the sick." True to his word, later that evening both brothers visited the sick child. While Yasir sat beside the boy's mat reciting healing verses from the Quran in his melodious voice, Ammar mixed honey with warm water and helped the child sip slowly. By morning the fever had broken, and though the brothers insisted it was Allah alone who healed, the family's gratitude only added to their growing reputation. Such stories were common throughout the region. When the roof of the village masjid began to leak during the rainy season, it was Ammar who organized the repairs, working alongside other men while refusing payment. When a traveling merchant fell ill and could not continue his journey, it was Yasir who opened their home to him, caring for the stranger for nearly a month until he regained his strength. Their generosity extended beyond their immediate community. Once each month, the brothers would load a small donkey cart with goods, dates and dried fruits from their small orchard, wooden utensils crafted by Ammar, medicines prepared according to their mother's recipes, and travel to neighboring, villages where poverty had struck hardest. "We have been blessed to bless others," Yasir would often say, a phrase their father had repeated throughout their childhood. What made their charity even more remarkable was that neither brother had been born into wealth. Everything they gave came from their own labor and careful stewardship. They lived by the Prophet's teaching that the upper hand that gives is better than the lower hand that receives. Each brother kept only what was necessary for his modest needs and dedicated the rest to serving others. Their reputation spread so widely that one day, a wealthy merchant from Damascus who was passing through the region went out of his way to visit their village. He had heard tales of the brothers whose generosity seemed without limit, and curiosity had gotten the better of him. The merchant found Yasir in the mosque, quietly teaching a group of students. He sat at the back, listening as Yasir explained a complex passage with simple words that even the youngest children could grasp. When the lesson ended, the merchant approached. "I have traveled far to meet the brothers I've heard so much about," he said. "Yet I see no palace, no fine clothes, no servants attending you. How can the stories of your generosity be true when you yourselves appear to have so little?" Yasir smiled warmly. "You must meet my brother as well before drawing conclusions," he said, inviting the merchant to join them for the evening meal. That night, as they sat on cushions around a simple meal of bread, lentil stew, and dates, the merchant watched the brothers closely. Their home was indeed modest, clean but small, with few possessions beyond necessities. Yet throughout the evening their door remained open. A young boy came seeking help with his Quran recitation, which Yasir provided patiently. A neighbor arrived to discuss the design of a new door for his home with Ammar. An elderly man stopped by simply for company and was welcomed as though he were an honored guest. As the darkness fell and oil lamps cast soft shadows on the walls, the merchant finally understood. The brothers' wealth was not in gold or silver, but in the community they had built, the knowledge they shared freely, and the faith that guided their every action. "I came seeking extraordinary men," the merchant confessed as the evening drew to a close. "Instead, I found ordinary men who followed the teachings of our faith in an extraordinary way." Ammar shook his head gently. "We are indeed very ordinary, which is why any good that comes through us must be from Allah alone." That night, as the merchant rested in the brothers' guest quarters, a simple but comfortable room they kept ready for travelers, he reflected on all he had seen. In Damascus, he had witnessed displays of charity from wealthy merchants who made sure everyone knew of their generosity. Yet here, in this humble village, he had found something far more valuable: sincerity that sought no recognition. What the merchant could not know was that the brothers' faith and character would soon be tested in ways none could imagine. The comfortable rhythm of village life was about to change, and the true depth of their devotion would be revealed through trials that would eventually lead to a miracle remembered for generations to come. But for now, they slept peacefully under a blanket of stars, unaware that Allah's plan for them was only beginning to unfold. The peaceful days in the small village outside Medina did not last. 6 months after the Damascus merchant's visit, dark clouds gathered on the horizon, bringing with them not the blessed rain everyone had prayed for, but a test that would shake the foundations of the entire community. It began slowly. The spring rains that usually soaked the fields and filled the wells came as mere sprinkles, barely enough to dampen the soil. Farmers looked anxiously toward the sky each morning, hoping for clouds that never appeared. By the time the planting season ended, everyone knew they faced trouble. "Allah tests those he loves," Yasir reminded the worried villagers after Friday prayers. His calm voice steadied the rising panic. "We must trust in his wisdom and help each other through what lies ahead." By midsummer, the drought had tightened its grip. The village well, once overflowing with sweet water, now required longer ropes to reach the shrinking pool below. Fields that should have been green with growing wheat and barley lay brown and cracked under the relentless sun. Even the hardy olive trees, some older than the village itself, dropped their leaves in distress. The first family to run out of food was that of Ahmad, a farmer with 7 young children. His wife came to the brothers' door at dusk, eyes downcast with shame. I would not ask if there were any other way, she whispered, her thin hands twisting the edge of her headscarf. But the children haven't eaten since yesterday morning. Without hesitation, Ammar filled a basket with bread, dates, and the lentils they had been saving. Yasir added a small bag of precious flour. Take this with joy, not shame, Yasir told her gently. Tomorrow is uncertain for all of us. Today, we share what Allah has provided. That night, the brothers talked long after the evening prayer, sitting cross-legged in their small courtyard, under a sky brilliant with stars. We have enough stored grain to help several families for maybe 2 weeks, Ammar calculated, running a hand through his beard. But after that, Yasir nodded, his face solemn in the lamplight. We must think beyond our stores. Perhaps it's time to sell some of our treasures. These treasures were few but precious. Their father's silver dagger, their mother's wedding, jewelry, and a beautiful copy of the Quran written by a famous calligrapher, gifted to Yasir by a grateful student. By morning, they had packed these items carefully, and Ammar prepared for the journey to the larger town 3 days away, where he might find buyers. Be careful, brother, Yasir said, embracing Ammar before he departed. These are desperate times and the roads may not be safe. Ammar returned a week later, thinner but smiling, with a pouch of silver coins and a small caravan of donkeys laden with grain. The brothers immediately called the village elders together. This is not charity but survival, Ammar explained as they developed a plan to distribute the food. Every household will receive according to their need. No one will be turned away. For a month, their courtyard became a distribution center. Each morning, women arrived with baskets and clay pots, receiving measured portions with dignity. Children who had grown thin began to show signs of renewed energy. The village imam led special prayers of gratitude, though everyone knew the supplies would not last forever. As the drought continued, more families exhausted their reserves. The brothers sold their remaining possessions, tools, furniture, even the door to Ammar's workshop. When there was nothing left to sell, they began making daily trips into the desert to gather edible plants and hunt small game, skills their father had taught them long ago. One evening, as the brothers returned from such a journey, a grand caravan appeared on the horizon, 20 camels, richly decorated, accompanied by mounted guards. At its head rode the merchant from Damascus, dressed in fine silks that seemed almost offensive in the drought-stricken village. My friends, the merchant called out when he spotted the brothers. He dismounted with surprising agility for his age and embraced them both. I have been thinking of you since my visit. When I heard about the drought, I came immediately. That night, the merchant joined the brothers for a simple meal, far simpler than what he had shared during his previous visit. I have a proposal, he said, sipping water as if it were the finest wine. Come to Damascus with me, both of you. Your talents are wasted here in this suffering place. The merchant leaned forward, eyes bright with excitement. Yasir, the grand mosque needs teachers of your quality. Ammar, the nobles of the city would pay fortunes for your craftsmanship. You could live in comfort, send money back to help this village, and spread your good influence in the great city. The brothers exchanged glances but said little. After the merchant retired to sleep in their only remaining guest mat, they sat in silence for a long while. It makes sense, Ammar finally said, his voice barely above a whisper. We could help more people with the wealth we'd earn in Damascus. Yasir nodded slowly. The merchant speaks wisely from a worldly perspective. But, Ammar asked, knowing his brother well enough to sense the unspoken reservation. But I feel our test is here, not in Damascus, Yasir replied. Let's pray for guidance and see what the morning brings. That night, something extraordinary happened. Both brothers, sleeping in different corners of their nearly empty home, experienced the same dream. They saw themselves remaining in the village, working alongside their neighbors. In the dream, green shoots pushed through the cracked earth, and children laughed as they helped bring in a harvest that seemed blessed beyond natural abundance. When they woke before dawn for the first prayer, Neither needed to describe their dream to the other. They simply knew they had been given the same vision. Their path was clear. The merchant was disappointed but not surprised by their decision to stay. Before departing, he left them with a generous gift of gold coins and a promise to send supplies when he returned to Damascus. "You could become wealthy men in the city," he said as his servants prepared the camels for departure. "But I see now that you are already rich in ways I am only beginning to understand." After the merchant left, the brothers faced their most difficult decision yet. The gold he had given them could feed the entire village for several weeks if used carefully, or they could use it to buy seed and farming tools, gambling on rains that might never come. "What should we do?" Ammar asked as they walked the dusty path to the mosque for afternoon prayers. An old woman sat in the shade of a dying olive tree, too weak to acknowledge their greeting. Children played listlessly in the dirt, their games subdued by hunger. Yasir watched a small boy try 3 times to stand up after falling, his thin legs barely able to support him. "We use half for immediate food," he decided, "and half for seeds. We trust in Allah's mercy for the rain." The next day, Yasir stayed to organize the food distribution, while Ammar took 6 young men and the remaining gold to a distant town, rumored to have seed available. Their journey would take 2 weeks, a dangerous undertaking given their weakened condition and the bandits known to prey on travelers. While Ammar was gone, conditions in the village worsened. The well water turned brackish, and 2 elderly villagers died in their sleep, too frail to continue the fight. Yasir spent his days moving from home to home, offering what little food remained, reciting the Quran for the sick, and reminding everyone that Allah's mercy never abandons the faithful. At night, alone in the brother's home, he prayed fervently for Ammar's safe return and for the rain that seemed more impossible with each passing day. Sometimes doubt crept in like a shadow. Had they made the right choice refusing the merchant's offer? Could they have helped more effectively from Damascus? Each time, he pushed these thoughts away, renewing his trust in the dream they had. Both received. 15 days after his departure, 1 day longer than expected, Ammar returned. His face was sunburned and dust-covered, his clothes torn, but his eyes shone with triumph. Behind him came not only the 6 young men who had accompanied him, but 4 additional donkeys laden with sacks of seed grain, farming tools, and something even more precious: news. "The rains have started in the north," Ammar announced to the crowd that gathered around him. "And a caravan of water and supplies is only 2 days behind us, sent by a group of believers who heard of our plight." That night the brothers slept deeply for the first time in months. Their faith had been tested sorely, but they had not broken. They had given everything they owned, worked beyond exhaustion, and trusted when trust seemed foolish. Now, with seeds ready for planting and help on the way, they could finally rest. What they didn't know was that their greatest test, and the miracle that would make their story echo through generations, was still to come. True to Ammar's word, the promised caravan arrived 2 days later, bringing water, food, and renewed hope to the struggling village. Even more precious than these supplies was the news they carried. The drought that had gripped the region was finally weakening. Clouds had been seen gathering on the distant horizon, and villages to the north had already felt the first blessed drops of rain. As life in the village slowly improved, Yasir and Ammar found themselves busier than ever. With the seed grain they had purchased, the entire community worked together to prepare the fields for planting. Children who had been too weak to play now ran between the workers carrying water and small tools. Women prepared communal meals that, while still simple, no longer carried the sharp edge of desperation. The brothers moved from task to task, their energy seemingly without limit, their faith an anchor for the entire village. "Allah tests us not to break us but to strengthen us," Yasir reminded everyone during evening gatherings. "Like gold purified by fire, we emerge more valuable after hardship." 3 months after the worst of the drought, the village had regained much of its former life. The first tender shoots of wheat and barley had emerged from the soil following several days of gentle rain. The well water ran clear and sweet again. Even the ancient olive trees showed signs of recovery, their silvery leaves catching the sunlight as they had for generations before. It was on one such ordinary evening, as the golden light of sunset bathed the village in warmth, that an unexpected visitor arrived. Unlike the grand caravan of the Damascus merchant, this traveler came alone on foot, his simple woolen robe dusty from the road, a walking stick in his weathered hand. His beard was white as snow, his face deeply lined with age, yet his eyes held a clarity and brightness that seemed to belong to a much younger man. The traveler stopped at the village well, where Ammar was helping to draw water for several women. "Peace be upon you," the old man said, his voice surprisingly strong. "And upon you be peace," Ammar replied warmly. "You look like you've traveled far. Please drink." The old man accepted the water gratefully, drinking deeply before wiping his beard with the back of his hand. "I seek the brothers Yasir and Ammar," he said. "I was told they might offer shelter to a weary traveler." Ammar smiled. "I am Ammar. My brother Yasir is at the mosque teaching the evening Quran lesson. Our home is humble, especially after the drought, but whatever we have is yours to share." The old man studied Ammar's face with unusual intensity. "Allah's blessings are not measured in possessions," he said finally. "I hear these brothers have wealth of another kind." By the time Yasir returned from the mosque, Ammar had prepared a simple meal and made their guest comfortable. The brothers' home, once emptied of nearly all possessions during the drought, remained sparsely furnished. They had chosen to help rebuild their neighbors' homes before restoring their own comforts. "Our guest has traveled from far away," Ammar explained as Yasir joined them, "though he hasn't yet told us from where." The old man smiled mysteriously. "I have walked many roads," he said, accepting a bowl of lentil stew from Yasir. "Some would say too many for a man of my years." Throughout the evening meal, their visitor asked questions about the village, the drought, and how the community had survived such hardship. He listened intently as the brothers described their efforts, nodding, occasionally as if confirming something he already knew. "And the merchant from Damascus?" he asked. "Did his offer tempt you?" The brothers exchanged surprised glances. They had told no one the details of the merchant's proposal. "How did you know about that?" Yasir asked gently. The old man's eyes twinkled. "News travels even in a drought." He leaned forward. "Tell me, why did you stay when comfort and wealth were offered elsewhere?" "This is where we were needed," Ammar said simply. "And the dream?" the visitor pressed. "Did you both truly see the same vision on the same night?" Now the brothers were truly startled. No one knew of their shared dream except themselves. "Who are you?" Yasir asked, his voice still kind but firm. "How do you know these things?" The old man set down his empty bowl and sighed deeply. "Perhaps it is time I told you why I have come." He straightened his shoulders, and for a moment he seemed to shed years of age. "I was a companion of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him." The brothers' eyes widened. Most of the Prophet's companions had passed away decades ago. "Allah has granted me many years," the old man continued, noting their surprise. "I was very young when I met the Prophet, just a boy. I have lived in seclusion for many years, praying and fasting, until recently when dreams began to disturb my sleep." He looked directly at each brother in turn. Dreams of two brothers in a village struck by drought. Dreams so vivid I felt called to find you. That night the brothers gave the old man their sleeping mats, choosing to rest on simple rugs nearby. Throughout the night, they took turns tending to their guest, who seemed to grow more frail as the hours passed. He would wake suddenly, his breathing labored, and they would help him sit up, offering water and soothing words. During these quiet night hours, the old companion shared stories of the Prophet that neither brother had ever heard before. Intimate details of his kindness, his humor, the way his face would light up when his grandchildren entered a room. He described battles and journeys, moments of revelation and quiet acts of mercy that had not been recorded in the common traditions. "Why have you kept yourself hidden all these years?" Ammar asked during one such moment, as dawn approached and The first call to prayer would soon sound from the mosque. The old man closed his eyes briefly. "It was not time," he said simply. "Just as it is now time for me to deliver the message I was sent to give you." He motioned for both brothers to come closer. "Allah is pleased with your sacrifice and devotion," he whispered, his voice suddenly stronger. "But your greatest test is yet to come." Before either brother could ask what he meant, the old man's condition worsened dramatically. His breathing became shallow, his skin took on a grayish hue. Yasir ran to fetch the village healer, while Ammar stayed with their guest, reciting verses of the Quran that bring comfort to the dying. By the time the first light of dawn painted the sky with soft pink and gold, it was clear the end was near. The brothers helped the old companion perform his ritual washing as best his condition allowed and positioned him to face toward Mecca. "Before I go," the old man whispered, "you should know that your parents greeted me in my dream." Tears filled the brothers' eyes. Their parents had passed away years ago. "They asked me to tell you they are waiting, but not to hurry." A ghost of a smile crossed the old man's lips. "The work you have yet to do is too important." As the muezzin's call to prayer filled the air, the old companion took his final breath, his face relaxed in peace. The brothers closed his eyes gently and covered him with a clean cloth. They buried him that same day according to Islamic tradition. A simple grave without elaborate markers, his body wrapped only in white cloth, facing toward Mecca. The entire village attended the burial, though none except the brothers knew the true identity of the man they laid to rest. Yasir led the funeral prayers, his voice steady despite his grief. "He came to us as a stranger, but left as beloved family. He told the gathered villagers, 'May Allah grant him the highest place in paradise.'" That night, as the brothers sat alone in their home, the reality of the day's events began to settle upon them. "Do you believe he truly was a companion of the Prophet?" Ammar asked softly. Yasir nodded slowly. He knew things no one could have known, and there was something in his eyes. He paused, searching for words. It was like looking at history itself. "What do you think he meant about our greatest test yet to come?" Ammar wondered, staring into the small flame of their oil lamp. Before Yasir could answer, a frantic knocking interrupted their conversation. A young boy from the village stood at their door, his eyes wide with fear. "Come quickly," he gasped. "Travelers have arrived from the south. They bring terrible news." The brothers exchanged a glance, both remembering the old companion's warning. Without a word, they rose together and stepped out into the night, unaware that they were walking toward the destiny that would eventually make their story echo through the centuries. The brothers followed the young boy through the darkness, guided by scattered oil lamps that flickered in village windows. The night air felt unusually heavy, as though the world itself sensed the weight of what was coming. They arrived at the village square, where a small crowd had already gathered around 3 travel-worn men, whose exhausted faces told of hard journeys and harder news. The village imam was trying to maintain order as worried voices called out questions. When he spotted Yasir and Ammar, relief washed over his tired face. "Brothers, come," he beckoned. "These travelers bring news we all must hear." The crowd parted to let them through. The oldest of the travelers, a thin man with a face weathered by sun and worry, stepped forward. "We come from the coastal villages 3 days' journey south," he began, his voice hoarse. "A sickness has swept through our lands like fire through dry grass. We lost a third of our village in just 2 weeks." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Mothers pulled children closer to them instinctively. "The illness begins with fever and a deep cough," another traveler added. "Then purple spots appear on the skin. Few survive once the spots show." "We were told to warn all villages," the third man said. "It spreads quickly from person to person. Already it has reached settlements only a day's journey from here." The square erupted in frightened conversation. The imam raised his hands for silence. "Is there no treatment?" he asked. "No way to fight this disease?" The travelers shook their heads sadly, but then the oldest one spoke again. "There is a physician in the mountain city of Tabuk who claims some success with a rare herb that grows only on the highest peaks. But the journey there is treacherous, and few who are healthy enough to make the climb remain in the affected villages. That night, no one in the village slept well. The travelers were given shelter in the mosque, separated from others as a precaution. Though everyone knew if the disease was already approaching, such measures might be too late. At dawn, the village elders gathered to discuss their options. Some suggested abandoning the village temporarily, scattering to isolated areas until the sickness passed. Others argued for sealing the village off completely, allowing no one to enter or leave. Arguments grew heated as fear took hold. Brothers and sisters, Yasir's calm voice cut through the chaos. Before we decide anything, let us pray for guidance. After the prayer, a strange calm settled over the gathering. Ammar was the first to speak. "My brother and I will journey to the mountains to find this healing herb," he said simply. Protests immediately erupted. The village had just survived a drought largely because of the brothers' leadership. To lose them now seemed unthinkable. "The journey is too dangerous," one elder said. "And who knows if this herb even exists? Better to send younger men," another suggested. "You are too valuable here." Yasir shook his head gently. "The old companion who visited us, who now rests in our cemetery, warned that our greatest test was yet to come. We believe this is that test." His eyes met his brother's, an unspoken understanding passing between them. "Allah has prepared us for this moment." By midday, preparations were complete. The brothers would travel light, taking only essential food, water, warm cloaks for the mountain nights, and a small pouch of silver coins. The village healer, an elderly woman who had learned her craft from her mother and grandmother before her, gave them detailed descriptions of the herb they sought. "It grows between rocks where little else survives," she explained, drawing the plant's distinctive star-shaped leaves in the dust. "The stems are reddish, and it bears tiny white flowers. Even in the coldest seasons, its roots smell of honey when crushed." As the brothers prepared to leave, villagers brought small tokens: a carefully preserved dried fig, a tiny vial of precious rose oil, a smooth stone inscribed with a prayer. Each gift was accepted with gratitude. Each giver embraced as though for the last time. "Return to us safely," the imam said as he blessed their journey. "We will pray for you with every prayer." The path to the mountains was well traveled at first, winding through farming villages and trading posts. But with each passing day they encountered fewer travelers, and those they met hurried past with scarves covering their faces, fear evident in their eyes. On the fourth day, they reached a village that had already been touched by the sickness. Houses stood empty, doors swinging open in the wind. Those few residents who remained moved like ghosts among the abandoned homes, hollow-eyed and suspicious of strangers. "You should not stop here," an old woman warned them from the doorway of her home. "Death lives with us now." Despite the warning, the brothers could not simply pass by. They spent 2 days in that sorrowful place, helping to bury the dead, comforting the living, sharing their limited supplies with those too weak to help themselves. Before leaving, they marked each door with a small symbol in charcoal: those with sick inside, those needing food, those completely empty, so that any future travelers might know where help was most needed. As they continued their journey, the landscape changed. Gentle hills gave way to steeper slopes. Trees became scarcer, replaced by hardy shrubs and wind-twisted pines. The air grew thinner and cooler. Each morning they woke to find frost on their blankets. The physician's village should be just beyond that ridge, Yasir said on the 10th day, pointing to a towering wall of rock ahead. "If Allah wills it, we'll reach it by evening prayer." But fate, or perhaps Allah's plan, had a different path in mind. As they rounded a bend in the narrow mountain trail, they came upon a small group of travelers huddled against a rock face. Even from a distance, the brothers could see that something was wrong. "Peace be upon you," Ammar called out as they approached cautiously. "Do you need assistance?" A man rose shakily to his feet. His face was flushed with fever, his eyes bright with sickness. "Stay back," he warned, his voice cracking. "We carry the plague." There were 6 of them, 2 men, a woman, and 3 children. They had fled their village when the sickness appeared but had been too late. Now the disease had caught up with them in this desolate place. We were trying to reach the mountain healer, the woman explained, her own voice weak. But we can go no further. She gestured to the children who lay bundled in threadbare blankets, their small faces marked with the telltale purple spots. The brothers exchanged a glance. They had enough supplies to reach the mountain city if they continued without delay. Stopping to help these strangers meant depleting those supplies, risking their own health, and possibly failing in their mission to save their village. "We will make camp here," Yasir said, already unshouldering his pack. "Allah has placed you in our path for a reason." For 3 days, the brothers cared for the sick travelers. They built a shelter of pine branches to protect them from the mountain winds. They shared their food and water, even knowing it meant they would face hunger themselves later. Each day they climbed higher into the mountains searching for the healing herb, returning by evening to tend to their patients. On the 4th day, the youngest child, a boy of perhaps 5 years, took his last breath just before dawn. His mother's grief echoed off the mountain walls, a sound so raw it seemed to pierce the brothers' hearts. They buried the child with proper prayers, using their own hands to dig into the rocky soil. That same afternoon, Ammar discovered a small patch of plants growing in a crevice that matched the healer's description: star-shaped leaves, reddish stems, tiny white flowers, and roots that released a sweet scent when crushed. "Allah is most merciful," Yasir whispered as they carefully gathered every precious leaf. They prepared the herb as the mountain healer had instructed the travelers, crushing the leaves and roots into a paste, mixing it with water, and having the sick drink it while also applying it to the purple spots on their skin. By nightfall, the fevers seemed less intense, the breathing less labored. With renewed hope, the brothers continued treating the travelers for 2 more days until they were strong enough to travel again. Then, with the remaining herbs carefully wrapped in clean cloth, the brothers bid farewell to the family and continued their journey to the mountain city. There, they would seek the physician and learn how to gather and prepare more of the precious medicine. But as they climbed the final slope toward the city gates, Yasir stumbled. Ammar caught him before he fell, alarmed to feel the unnatural heat radiating from his brother's skin. "It's nothing," Yasir insisted. "Just tiredness from the journey." Yet by the time they reached the physician's house, both brothers knew the truth that neither wanted to speak aloud. In helping the sick travelers, they had contracted the very illness they had come to fight. The greatest test, as foretold by the Prophet's companion, was upon them. The mountain physician's home was modest, a stone structure built against the face of the cliff, with windows that captured both morning sunlight and evening stars. Inside, dried herbs hung from the ceiling beams, filling the air with a complex mixture of scents both sharp and sweet. Scrolls and ancient texts lined the walls, speaking of a lifetime devoted to healing. The physician himself was older than the brothers had imagined, with hands gnarled like olive tree roots and eyes that seemed to look beyond the surface of things. He took one glance at Yasir and Ammar and immediately directed them to sleeping mats near the warmth of his hearth. "The plague has marked you both," he said simply, his voice like stones rolling together. "But Allah has brought you to me in time, perhaps." For 3 days, the brothers drifted between consciousness and fevered dreams. The physician treated them with the same herb they had discovered, but prepared in ways known only to him. Boiled, with certain roots, steeped with honey, applied as poultices to the purple marks that had begun to appear on their skin. During moments of clarity, they told him about their village, the Prophet's companion who had visited them, and the travelers they had helped on the mountain path. "Your compassion may cost you your lives," the physician observed without judgment as he changed the poultices on Ammar's chest. "Yet it may have saved your souls." By the 4th day, Ammar showed signs of improvement. His fever broke before dawn, and he awoke with enough strength to sit up and take broth. Yasir, however, grew worse. The purple marks spread across his body like shadows at sunset, and his breathing became a painful struggle that filled the small house with its harsh rhythm. "Brother," Yasir whispered during a rare moment of lucidity, grasping Ammar's hand, If I do not survive, you must take the medicine back to our people. Ammar's eyes filled with tears. We will return together or not at all. The physician, overhearing this exchange, shook his head. The herbs we have prepared will not last the journey, he said. They must be fresh to hold their power. I have taught you both how to identify and prepare them. One must return to teach others while one remains here to recover. Then I will go, Ammar declared, though he was still weak from his illness. Yasir must rest until he is strong again. But Yasir's condition continued to deteriorate. That night, as a rare summer storm battered the mountain with wind and rain, he called both Ammar and the physician to his side. I have seen our parents in my dreams, he whispered, his voice barely audible above the storm. They are waiting, as the prophet's companion said, but not for both of us, not yet. He gripped Ammar's hand with surprising strength. You must live, brother. Our village needs at least one of us. Before dawn, as the storm subsided and the first pale light touched the eastern sky, Yasir asked to be helped outside. Though the physician warned against it, Ammar could not refuse his brother's request. Together with the old healer, he carried Yasir to a flat stone overlooking the valley below, where the first rays of sunlight would reach them. I want to feel the sun on my face one more time, Yasir said as they positioned him facing east, and I wish to leave this world while looking toward Mecca. As the sun broke over the distant horizon, painting the sky in shades of gold and rose, Yasir recited the Shahada, the declaration of faith that is both the first words whispered to a newborn Muslim and the last words many hope to speak before death. There is no God but Allah, and Muhammad is his messenger, he said, each word measured and clear despite his weakness. With those sacred words still lingering in the air, Yasir closed his eyes for the final time, his face peaceful in the growing light of day. Ammar held his brother's body and wept without shame, his tears falling like rain upon the stone beneath them. They buried Yasir on the mountainside, facing toward Mecca, his grave marked only by a circle of white stones gathered from the surrounding slopes. The physician led the funeral prayers, his ancient voice carrying the sacred words into the vast blue sky above them. Your brother was a man of rare faith, the physician told Ammar afterward. In all my years of healing, I have seen few face death with such peace. For 2 more days, Ammar remained with the physician, gathering strength and learning everything he could about the healing herbs. Though grief sat heavy in his chest, he knew his duty to the living remained. On the morning of the 3rd day, he prepared to leave, his pack filled with dried herbs, seeds to plant, and detailed instructions written by the physician's own hand. Remember, the old healer said as Ammar prepared to depart, the fresh herb is strongest. What you carry will help, but you must establish it in your own soil quickly. The journey back seemed both longer and shorter than the journey up. Longer because each step took him farther from his brother's resting place. Shorter because urgency drove him forward without rest. He avoided villages where the sickness might delay him, traveling instead through wilderness paths, guided by stars at night and sun by day. On the 10th day, as he crested the final hill overlooking his village, Ammar stopped in shock. Half the homes appeared empty, with no smoke rising from their cooking fires. Even from a distance, he could sense the heaviness that hung over the place, the unmistakable presence of grief. He ran the final distance, his exhausted legs finding new strength and fear. The first person he encountered was a young boy carrying water, his thin face lighting up with disbelief at the sight of Ammar. "You've returned," the boy cried, dropping his water jug and running to spread the news. Within moments, villagers emerged, from homes and the mosque, surrounding Ammar with tears and embraces. The sickness had indeed reached them, claiming nearly 30 lives already. Among the dead were the imam, 2 elders, and several children. "We feared you and your brother were lost to us as well," one woman said, then paused, noticing Ammar was alone. "Where is Yasir?" Ammar's voice caught in his throat. "He gave his life so that I might return with this," he said finally, opening his pack to show them the precious herbs. He rests now on the holy mountain, facing toward Mecca. That night, Ammar taught the village healer and several others how to prepare the medicine. By morning, they had treated every sick person in the village. Within days, new cases slowed and then stopped entirely. Those already infected began to recover, their bodies freed from fever and pain. When the crisis had passed, Ammar led the villagers in planting the herb seeds in a special garden near the mosque. "These will be our protection if the sickness ever returns," he explained, "my brother's final gift to us all." Life gradually returned to normal in the village. Fields were tended, children played once more in the streets, and prayers rose 5 times daily from the mosque. Yet there remained a hollow space in Ammar's heart where his brother had always been, a space no amount of work or prayer seemed to fill. 6 months after his return, on a night when the moon hung full and bright above the sleeping village, Ammar dreamed of Yasir. In the dream, his brother stood in a garden more beautiful than any earthly place, beside a stream of water clearer than crystal. "Do not grieve for me," Yasir said, his face radiant with joy. "I am waiting where rivers flow beneath gardens of eternity. But not for you, brother, not yet. Your work continues." Ammar woke with tears on his face but peace in his heart. From that day forward, he dedicated himself to serving the village with even greater devotion, teaching children as Yasir had done, continuing his carpentry, and sharing their story with all who would listen. Years passed. Ammar grew old, his beard turning white, his back beginning to bend with age. Yet he remained beloved by all, a living testament to faith and brotherhood. When travelers passed through the village, they often sought him out to hear firsthand the story of the 2 brothers and their sacrifice. When Ammar finally passed away peacefully in his sleep at the age of 82, the entire village mourned. Following his last wishes, they buried him in a simple grave with no monument, just as his brother had been buried on the distant mountain. But on the 7th night after his burial, something extraordinary happened. Villagers awoke to find a soft light emanating from the brothers' graves, Ammar's in the village cemetery and, according to travelers from the mountain regions, Yasir's as well, though separated by many miles. The light formed a pillar reaching toward the heavens, visible for miles around. By morning, the light had faded, but in its place 2 olive trees had sprouted, one from each grave. These were no ordinary saplings, but fully formed trees with silver-green leaves that whispered in the breeze. Most remarkably, though growing from separate graves far apart, the trees were somehow connected. When leaves fell from one, they would fall from the other. When one flowered, so did the other. Islamic scholars traveled from distant lands to witness this miracle. The site became known as the Tomb of 2 Brothers, a place of pilgrimage where prayers were said to be especially blessed. Visitors reported dreams of the brothers in paradise, walking together in gardens beneath which rivers flow, the eternal reward promised to the righteous in the Quran. Over centuries, countless pilgrims visited the intertwined trees that came to symbolize the brothers' unbreakable bond, a bond that transcended even death. Their story passed from generation to generation, inspiring Muslims to live with the same faith, generosity, and love that had defined the brothers' lives. And though empires rose and fell, though cities changed and grew around them, the 2 olive trees remained, their branches reaching toward each other across the distance, living proof that some bonds are eternal, and that Allah's miracles continue in this world for those with eyes to see them.